Alright, so as this video renders out, I'm going to do my next video. And that is adding a LED back wall to one of my fish tanks. I'll be doing the LED back wall on this tank here. So I'm going to show what I use to actually get this thing put together. Alright, so what I'm going to use is a sheet of Elmer's foam board from Walmart. I'm using Elmer's because it's stronger. I'm going to use the LED strips from Walmart also. These are their little $5 strips. Box cutter, a pencil to mark, hot glue, and a soldering iron because I actually need to change. Because the reason why I'm going to use solder is because I have to move this little IR sensor to where it can be seen, so I can actually hide the little motherboard right here behind the actual panel to make it look nice and clean. So give me a few seconds to figure everything out and I'll come back. Luckily I got so many 10-gallon tanks set up. I'll just be able to use one of these 10 gallons and just figure out how the width of how much I need to cut, and then I'll mark and do the cuts and come back. So I'm going to do that right now. Alright, so I got the width figured out. Now I got to figure out how tall I want to make it. Normally whenever I'm doing these little backboards, I'll just make it as tall as the rim, from basically rim to rim on these 10 gallons or whatever tank I'm doing. But since I'm adding LEDs to it, I'm going to actually make it so that it's going to be slightly more about here or so. That way so I can easily hide the actual LED strip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the board, make sure I'm actually measuring on the correct part. And then I'll just put how much I think I need to hide the LEDs from, and then I'll mark at the edge of the rim. So I'm going to go and do that right now and cut it and come back. Alright, so I got the back cover properly sized up to where I want it to be. So now we got to go and make a lip so I can actually have something to attach the LEDs to. So I'm going to use the sheet of foam board I actually have left over. And I'm going to basically mark it just slightly more thicker than what the LED strips are, than the thickness of the LED strips. So give me a second. I am a one-man camera crew, so you gotta bear with me. So I'm just going to mark it a little bit more thicker than this, so I can have enough room for errors and whatnot. And for me, this is the thickness I chose. I'm doing this all more or less eyeballing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut about 5, maybe 6 slithers that are this thick. That way so I can have enough of these little things to actually fully wrap the edge of the inner sheet of foam. The reason why I'm using the inner sheet, and I actually marked it because this side here is a little beat up, so when the LEDs shine on it, you'll be able to see all the imperfections on like this section here. So I'm going to go and cut those little side slithers and come back. Alright, so I got the pieces cut out. So I'm just going to go in and hot glue these on the inner edges, and I will come back. Okay, so every time I see a video like this when it comes to these LEDs and whatnot, the one thing I see people not failing to disclose is that you can actually cut on the copper. But the way these things are wired up, you can just cut individual pieces off to do anything you want. It's the same. It goes for both the little black colored ones or the white colored ones like I got right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut mine at this little solder joint right here, because if I cut it there, it'll easily and nicely fit right across. Basically it'll fit, you know what I mean, it'll basically fit without any problems. So I'm going to do that and come back. Alright, so I got and attached it. Though what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bead of hot glue at the very edge right here, because the sticky tape that's on this particular strand of LEDs is pretty crap. Then again, these are only $5 RGB LED strips you can get from Squally Mart. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to leave this like this. Actually, it turns out getting the black colored LEDs is a lot easier to work with than the other LEDs, which doesn't come with this nice little cable here. So don't get the white ones if you for this particular build. I just have two on hand and whatnot. I'm actually going to be using these on a totally separate build that's not fish care related. So yeah, I'll come back when I get all that figured out. Alright, and pretty much this is how it's going to look. It's not as full as I was initially hoping for, but I'm hoping once I put it behind the actual tank, it should look like something. So I'm both recording this as a tutorial and of basically the whole build process of me actually building something for one of my tanks. So let me see. I need to figure out what exactly I need to come back to next, and I'll do that. Alright, so this right here is where it goes into making why I need to make the little side pieces, basically side walls, a little bit more thicker than the actual LEDs. And that's because of the black rim right here. Now of course this goes for if you're using a tank with a rim. If you have a rimless tank, you don't have to do this step. But we gotta go, but basically what will happen is once we actually go to put this on the, stupid battery bank, on the actual side of the tank, give me a second, we go to one matter tank so I can actually place this on. It doesn't sit flush, as you can tell. So what we need to do is we need to cut out the the little extra piece to make sure it's nice and flush. And with the way I've cut the the wall thickness for mine, I can pretty much just cut off the whole bit right in front of the LED strip, and it'll basically cut out all the thickness I need. So I'm gonna go and do that right now. Alright, and I also cut off a little bit of a notch right here, and now everything sits flush. Now as you do note, that on my particular build, I haven't filled in this section yet. That's because I need to basically modify this thing ever so slightly, or at the very least cut off this little sheath so I can actually bend this wire back so I can actually make this thing look nice and clean. And that's due to the fact that I have such a super tight is that I have so little room. I have to make this thing as clean and as form whatever it is as physically possible. And of course, if I put it onto one of my other 10-gallon tanks, everything now properly lines up, and there's no gaps between the side walls, as you can tell. So I'm going to go and figure out what exactly I'm going to do to get this thing to properly bend over, and I'll come back. Alright, so I more or less got everything set up to where it needs to be. I cut off a little bit of whatever that was to make it so this portion here will bend a lot more easier. And I more or less just routed it to the back. So now now comes the really fun part. I have to go in there and actually cut this so I can move the IR sensor up to about here or so. So I'm going to cut off this sheathing, and also hopefully remember where the little arrow is and whatnot. So basically it just plugs in like so. And of course if I leave it like this, the IR sensor can't see the actual remote here. So I have to, like I said, I have to move the IR sensor up to here. So I'm going to cut off the sheathing and come back. Alright, and here is the actual motherboard that controls the RGB aspect of these LED strips. This right here is the IR sensor. Right here is the little control board that takes inputs from the IR sensor and tells the LEDs what to do. And here are the actual power leads and whatnot. The one I marked here is a little arrow lead, which is also negative. There's only one negative, and the rest of these are positive for each LED color and whatnot. So basically, negative pin right here at where the little arrow is, and then the three other ones are positive. So the next thing I gotta do is I gotta mark the IR sensor so I can properly wire everything up, desolder this thing, and then add the extension wires. So I'm gonna go and do that right now. Now when it comes to desoldering the IR sensor, it really doesn't matter which pin you well, actually it does to an extent. I just mark one of the outer pin leads with just a little black mark. You put a little black marker, good grief, just mark it on the little solder pin and then mark it on the actual little actual diode itself. So I'm going to go and desolder this and come back. Alright, I don't know if you can see it or not, but I accidentally destroyed the middle pad. I believe I even managed to mess up the left pad, this pad here. So what I gotta do now is I gotta do the Louis Rossmann scrape of shame. So I'm gonna go and basically scrape away enough to where I can get to the copper underneath and repair this thing. So yeah, I'm gonna be turning into Louis Rossmann for a second. Alright, so as you can tell, the LEDs still work. I got the IR sensor rewired, so time to see if I fixed it. And it looks like I have. Everything is now in full functioning order as it should be. So yeah. So I just got in that. So now I just gotta mount it, clean the back area up, and see how it looks inside on the tank before I go anywhere else. Before I do anything else. So what I'm going to do for me is I'm just going to mount it like this. I'm going to have the bulging end basically like this because that's how it works for me. So I'm going to go do that and get all this cleaned up and come back. Alright, so I've also just basically caked the whole board in hot glue. It's still not completely cured yet because it's still slightly warm to the touch. But I'm at a point now where I can come back. Also, what I did is I put in a little, is I actually attached the little receiver to a wooden dowel because I actually found out that basically it won't be able to be seen unless I actually make it a little bit more higher. And as you can tell now, the thing now has a clear line of sight whenever I tell it to do something. And that's what I need to have happen, because if it can't clearly see the remote, it won't do what I tell it to do when I give it a button press and whatnot. So I'm going to wait for the hot glue to fully cure and then put this on. Then I'm going to temporarily put this onto my tank. And then if it actually looks right, then I'm going to go and do like a mass wire change so I can actually pull the tank out of that really big crevice, attach this thing to the back, and then finish this video up. Okay, actually what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drain this tank quite a bit. Hopefully I'll be able to drain it to where I can still pick it up and put it back. I'm probably going to drain about maybe 6-7 gallons out of it. And I'm just going to attach this thing to the tank and be done with it. Or at least just attach it and come back and whatnot. So, yeah. Luckily I have a gym marathon to listen to in the background.
Just one thing.
And this is an old gym video too, so it's gonna be good. Though my new monitor is not exactly a little too high, so I'm gonna figure something else out. If anything, I need to get a new stand so I can lower this thing. But yeah, gym marathon while I'm working on fish crap. All right, so I got the back plate on, and you can pretty much see how far I drained the water. About around 2, maybe 3 gallons worth. The angelfish hate the water level, but they're doing just fine. I'm currently putting in their new water. The reason why the water is this way is because give me a second. Corey from Aquarium Co-op said that the in wintertime water is cooler than it usually is in summer. So basically there's a lot of oxygen in this water. And the only way you can get out is in hot water is just bubble up like it is right now. Yes, I did put the chlorinizer and whatnot in this water, so it is fine. Just want to explain why it looks the way it does. Alright, and just like that, the back is now on. And as you can see, it more or less does its job. The only problem is you can actually see the LED strip. That's due to the way light refracts in water and whatnot. Normally, most likely if I had a substrate on this inside this tank, you wouldn't actually see the LED strip. But for right now, this is going to be a bare bottom tank until this tank gets more properly cycled and I see how these two interact with each other. So far, I haven't seen any problems with them. Currently, right now, they're hiding because I'm sitting here and they're still not really used to this particular setup. But as you can tell, the tank works, and of course I have the controller here. I can choose whatever color I want if I wanted. And as you can tell, everything fully works. I can even dim the LEDs if I want, if I can figure out which proper one dims the LEDs. There we go. And I can choose whatever effect I want. But for me, I'm just going to keep it like this. And of course, I have a little switch here for the main tank light. But yeah, that's pretty much it. The whole thing's just held on by tape. So if I need to do any repairs or anything like that, or I want to remove because I think it's ugly, I can easily do that. I do plan on eventually adding 2 beta cup filters into this tank and removing this one. But for right now, this is how everything's going to go until this thing's properly cycled. But yeah, I think that's it for the most part. Alright, so I'm sitting here waiting for an emulator to load. And if I actually point over to the fish tank, as you clearly can tell, they're actually out and about. So like I said, they're just not used to me being so close to them or even in this tank, so it's reasonable for them to not be completely used to their new setup. But they are both out and about and doing their own thing.